Hello everyone and welcome back to Facebook Live. Today we're going to be discussing the attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II and if the United States were prepared for the attack or not. And today we're going to be showing our evidence on why we think they were not prepared. America was very harmed for the attack due to several casualties that occurred. Many families have lost loved ones that fought for our country. But now we use that as history and we've learned from it, and also a reason that we entered and in a major statement on our U.S. history. Also, if Pearl Harbor never happened, then we wouldn't have joined the war. A lot of people say if America didn't join the war, then the Nazis probably would have won. So if Pearl Harbor never happened, then we not would have not won the war.
World War II began on the 1st of September of 1939 and ended on the 2nd of September of 1945. Many countries in the world participated in this and came together to form the Allied forces and the Axis powers, which main countries included Germany, Italy, and Japan. The United States of America was part of the Allied forces. But the US wasn't completely alongside the Allies right when the war started. The reason why the US joined the Allies was because they joined the war, and the main reason that they joined the war was because of the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor. The event of Pearl Harbor took place on the 7th of December, 1941 and resulted in the death of 403 service members, the injury of 1,178 servicemen, and the destruction or damage of 6 U.S. planes. On top of that, 169 U.S. Navy, Army and Air Corps planes. A question regarding Pearl Harbor that is often asked is, was the U.S. prepared for the attack on Pearl Harbor? Even after all the evidence and facts are presented, some people still believe that we were prepared, even though it's clear that we were not. This was the case for many reasons, one of them being the fact that the US was tricked into believing that Japan would not attack them. US military officials overlooked many warning signs and symbols indicating the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service was preparing for war against the United States. Examples of this include an intercepted message from the Japanese asking about information about the layout of Pearl Harbor, as well as a radar sighting of a large group of airplanes headed towards the island of Oahu on the morning of the 7th of December, the day the attack on Pearl Harbor took place. Japan's success of deceiving the United States was also due to the fact that they continually expressed genuine interest in peace, as well as saying false statements about their position on attacking Pearl Harbor. It was later found that the attack was planned weeks in advance to the 7th of December. On top of all of these, a United States Army private actually did notice the unusually large flight of Japanese planes on his radar screen, but was told to disregard them as a flight of American B-17s was expected to arrive from the continental United States at that time. When the US was first beginning to be ambushed by the Japanese, only 6 US planes got into the air to repel the attackers. That means that only 6 planes were sent to fend off and attempt to protect the base from the first assault by 200 Japanese planes. Looking back, the US could have been more than capable enough to be prepared for this attack on their country. If only they listened to the warnings and information that they had received, they could have fought back and have caused drastically less casualties. Moving on, if you look at the amount of damage, destruction, casualties and injuries, it is very evident that the US was not prepared for the attack on Pearl Harbor. And according to a National World War II Museum Pearl Harbor fact sheet, among the 2,403 Americans killed, 2,008 were sailors, 218 were soldiers, 109 were Marines, and 68 were civilians. There weren't just the people were hurt and killed by the attack, but many military vehicles that were at the base were also destroyed or severely damaged. The attack destroyed 169 U.S. Navy and Army Air Corps planes, but also some of the biggest losses to the base were the battleships that were totaled, like the USS Virginia and the USS Oklahoma. There was one ship in particular, the USS Arizona, that was struck several times by Japanese bombs, and exploded as it sunk, adding over 1,100 deaths to the death toll, including Rear Admiral Isaac C. Kidd and the ship's commanding officer, Captain Franklin Van Valkenburg. At the Wheeler Army Airfield, the damage was very disastrous. Out of the 126 planes that were originally parked there, after the attack, only 43 were fit for service. This means that more than half of the planes at the Wheeler Airfield were destroyed as a result of Japan's attack. Keep in mind that this is just the damage at one airfield in particular. This isn't accounting for the damage at any other airfield. With this in mind, the total number of destroyed aircrafts totaled in to be over 180. Overall, 2 battleships were destroyed and 6 were damaged. 3 cruisers were damaged. 1 auxiliary vessel was destroyed and 3 were damaged. And 3 destroyers were damaged. Though the USS Arizona was the one of the worst battleship losses for the US. It was a hard blow to lose the other military ships, because the ships that were destroyed could have been used for the war and it would have given the US more firepower to work with. A much larger amount of damage could have been inflicted on Pearl Harbor on the attack, according to retired U.S. Navy Commander Alan D. Zim. Japanese Captain Mitsuo Fuchida, who led the aerial attack on Pearl Harbor, made a critical mistake by firing 2 flares, which signaled to his aviators that they had not caught the Americans by surprise. As a result, they used more cautious tactics and made far less damage than they might have. The US had gotten very lucky with this misfire by the captain. With all of the damage that the Japanese had created, they could have done much more if it wasn't for the new tactics that they had to use in order to be safe. The Japanese dealt out a large and existential amount of wreckage to the US Army base Pearl Harbor, and though their main goal was really to destroy important American fleet units, what it really did was make a statement that Japan was not messing around and they were there to fight. But knowing that the US wasn't prepared to defend against the attack made the Japanese that much more confident to attack, because they had the upper hand and they were able to charge at a defenseless and unprepared Pearl Harbor. If the US was prepared, then the level of destruction that Japan had caused would have been limited way more than it had been. Moving on to the third and final reason supporting our group's claim that the US wasn't prepared for the attack at Pearl Harbor. The US wasn't ready to believe that their own intelligence, in regards to the Pearl Harbor attack, was incorrect. The US was certain that the nation of Japan would not attack them, as the US was far more powerful and could easily defeat them in battle. They also thought that if they were going to attack the US or any of the US's bases, that they would attack the San Diego Naval Base, because the only reason for another country to attack the United States would be to theoretically wound us by destroying our resources. Also, an attack to the continental United States would have been far more destructive than an attack to an island of the United States. Throughout the entire time, the US would not question or deny their own judgment of thinking that Japan or any other country would not attack. The US would continue to believe that they were safe and had nothing to worry about. They thought this for many reasons, one of them being that the president at the time, FDR, assumed that the war would remain in Europe and Asia, when almost the entirety of a nation believed that they would not be attacked. There was no reason to be prepared for an attack, so they weren't. The US reasoned that it would not be in favor of any of the members of the Axis powers to attack them, as it would lead to the US joining the war, which would not be beneficial for them, as the US would join the Allies and would add to the power of the Allies. On top of this, the US thought that since Germany's main focus was just to invade Europe, mainly Russia, they were safe from being attacked. Japan, however, did not share this same interest and neglected to inform Germany that they would be attacking the US. They essentially surprise attacked America. The US was warned and knew that there was a high chance of the attack from Japan, but through all of that still discarded the possibility of that outcome and ended up paying the price for that ignorance. The US never expected the surprise ambush from the Japanese, and that's why it made such an impact and effect on the US. If the US was prepared for the attack, then there would not have been as much damage and destruction as there was, with way less casualties as well. The US just was never prepared, which eventually backfired on them.